Hello, welcome to my presentation about creating a widget for iOS using WidgetKit. My name is Jeroen Zonneveld. I'm a project manager at Triple. I'm from the Netherlands and I'm blogging on zonneveld.dev, which is my mobile development blog. I also love to create new apps to find out new functionalities of frameworks Apple developed. So for example, I created the Countdown Go app to find out all the functionalities from CloudKit, and Curaçao Airport to learn more about WatchOS, or Store Reviews to learn how to create an app with Catalyst for macOS. And for both Curaçao Party, Countdown Go app and Curaçao Airport, I created this year a widget using WidgetKit. This presentation will be about WidgetKit. So first I will share some introduction about WidgetKit. Next, building a WidgetKit extension, how you can refresh your widget, how DEEPLINKS are working, and the benefits from XCODE preview. So first let's talk about what is WidgetKit. Widgets all started with iOS 8, which was released in September 2014. At that moment, it were Today extensions, but it was the foundation for widgets. During WWDC 20, Apple released a framework which was named WidgetKit, and that allows you to create modern widgets. Those widgets are created using SwiftUI, and you are only able to create your widgets using SwiftUI. Widgets can be created for iOS, macOS, and iPadOS, and you can easily share those code of the widgets between those platforms. And it makes it even easier with SwiftUI, as you can share the complete UI for those platforms. For iPadOS and iOS, the widgets will be visible on the main screen, and for macOS it will be visible on the desktop. Widgets have multiple sizes, so you can create a small, a medium, or a large size. And there are some limitations on widgets, so you are not able to have any animation in your widget. Interaction is not possible for UI elements like a slider, a button, or a stepper. And animated images, for example GIF or video, is not supported. So you can't have any animation inside your widget. So now we know a little bit the basic about widgets. Let's see how we can build a widget extension from scratch. So first you select the widget extension as a new target in XCODE. And you give a widget a name, which is, for example, for my Countdown app, the Countdown widget. At this moment, I didn't use the checkbox include configuration intent, as I don't need a user input for my Countdown app, as it is a random widget which selects a random event. But if you want to get user input for your widget from your user, you may have to fill in the checkbox. Users can, using the configuration intent, set input on your widget. For example, for the Reminders app, you are able to select a list of your reminders, or for the Weather app, you may be able to select a location to show the weather for the widget. When you created your widget target, it is visible in XCODE in the project navigator. And it contains 3 files, which are the widget example.swift file, which contains all the code for the widget. It contains an assets folder to put the images in, and an info.plist for the metadata and the versioning. Building a widget extension contains 4 objects which are very necessary, which is a view, the widget, the timeline provider, and the timeline entry. and I will go through all those objects one by one. So let's start with the timeline entry. The timeline entry contains all the data that your widget needs. So for example, in the widget you see on the right, which is just a simple widget showing the time, we only need a date. And a date is always a required part of the entry, as the date is also important for the widget to refresh itself. We will come back later on that in the presentation. When we have the date, for the widget, we are able to create a view. And the view is all the layout that is needed to show the widget to the user. The widget view contains an entry which contains all the data of our widget, and in SwiftUI the view. So in this case, the body of this view contains a text object which is containing the date in a time style. And using this, we are able to show the time to the user, which is only shown once. So when there's 1 minute more, it won't refresh itself, as it's just a static view. You are able to create multiple different sizes of widgets. So as I said at the start of the presentation, you have small, medium and large. And to know which size of the widget you're currently viewing, you have to check the widget family environment variable. You can add this variable to your code, and then you can check using an if statement which size is currently used. So for example, on the right you see I show a small and a medium widget. And the small widget, I only send a text which contains this is a small widget. And for medium and large, I show an icon of a clock and also a text, this is a medium or a large widget. And as you can see in the screenshot at the right, the medium widget contains an icon of a clock and the small one doesn't. A widget also contains some configuration, which is the widget object. It contains a kind, which is a unique identifier for the widget, and also a provider, which will send the data to the widget. And we will come back later on that, on the provider. It also contains the display name and a description, which is shown to the user when they want to add your widget to the main screen of the phone. So a widget needs a provider, and now let's see how the provider is working. A provider is a protocol which contains 3 functions. It's a placeholder, a snapshot, and a timeline. And so let's go through them. First, the placeholder. The placeholder is the view which is shown at the start and is shown until the data is ready to show the user the real data. So this may be half a second or maybe a few seconds, depending on how fast your data is fetched. The placeholder function returns an object of an entry, and that may be stubbed. You're not able to show data which you need to fetch inside the placeholder, as you have to send it immediately to the system. The data is also not shown to the user. So as you can see on the right screenshot, it's just a block. So you don't see the real date, but depending on how big the screen is, the block will be larger or smaller. so you can send stub data for this function. Next, the snapshot function. The snapshot function is used for when the user wants to select a widget. So you are up yourself to select any data you want to show to the user when he wants to add his widget. For example, you can always set a static date, but you can also fetch data here and show always a happy flow of your widget. That's up to you. So you have to fill in an entry, and when you have all the data for your entry, you can use the completion block to send the data. And before your data is shown, it will show a placeholder. So when you're fetching some data, you're able to fetch your data. Next, the timeline. And the timeline is the most important part of the protocol, as this is the place where you're fetching all your data to show the data to your user when they have the widget on their dashboard on. So the timeline function is used to get multiple entries. So you're not limited to one. You can set multiple entries. So for example, for the weather, you know the forecast. So you may want to set already 5 entries in the future. So when it is raining in about 1 hour, you already know that, and you can add that widget to the entry list. For example, for an app which contains the stock, the market, you're not able to guess the prices, so in that case it's not reasonable. But if you're able to forecast the future, you are able to give multiple entries. So in this case, we are able to forecast the dates for the future. So this example loops through the hours, which are the hours from now until up to 5 hours, and we add all those entries to the array of entries. And then when we have an array of entries, we create a timeline object including a policy which is at end. So when all the the entries are shown, then the timeline will be refreshed and we'll go through this again. So at the end, we give the timeline to the completion block and the widget will be shown. Because we have a date in the entries object, the system knows when to show each entry inside the view. There are different policies. So currently we're using the @end function. So at the end, when the array list is used, it will be refreshed. But there are multiple situations that you can use to refresh your timeline. So if you're having multiple entries, you're able to provide the timeline with multiple entries, and then when the last has been shown, you want to refresh your widget. That's the situation that is shown in the green. There's also a situation that you may not know when you want to refresh, when you have new data. For example, for a stock app, where the market is changing, then you may want to refresh every 30 minutes or every 1 hour. In that case, you can use the blue one, which is a after function containing the amount of time, and after that period, you want to refresh your widget to show to fetch new data and show the data to the user. There's also a situation where you maybe never want to refresh your data. So in that case, you can set never, and your widget will never be refreshed. And that may be useful for static widgets. Let's go through an example with my Countdown Go app to show a more real-world situation. I renamed my simple entry, which is the default name set by Apple, to an activity entry, and it contains multiple objects, which is the name of the activity, the days left, an image, and an error. My view is looking like this. So I want to know the widget family, so the widget size which is presented, and I want to know that because of the font size. When a medium or a large widget is shown to the user, I want that the font size is larger and better to read. So in that case, when the font size, the widget size is larger, I will set my font also larger. First, I check if I have an error, and when I have an error, I will not show my widget with an event, but I will show an error widget. So in that case, I will load the countdown widget error view, which is a SwiftUI view I created, including the error as a string. If I don't have an error, I can show the countdown widget activity view, and I can pass the entry, which containing the name, the image, and the days left, and also the size of the widget. And I can present the view to the user. My configuration will look like this. So I have a kind, which is my unique identifier, which is countdown_widget. And I have the configuration display name and a description set. And something important to know is that you must take care of localization. So, for example, if your app is English and Dutch, you want to have localization so your user is able to view your widget details in their own language. Next, the placeholder view. So before I fetch the events from CloudKit, I have an activity entry which contains stubby data. So the name is my activity name. I pass the days left. I don't have an image or an error. And as you can see on the right screen, it will contain two text blocks, which are invisible data. And also the image is not shown. And when the data is fetched using CloudKit, it will be shown to the user. And next, my timeline. And my timeline first is fetching the activities from CloudKit. When it is done, I may have an error message, or I may have the list of activities. For example, when the user didn't give access to CloudKit, I'm not able to get those activities. So in that case, I want to show the error to the user that it needs to enable CloudKit. In that case, I will add one activity entry to the entries list without a name, days left, or an image, but with the error. And I add that to the timeline, and the policy is that after the current time, I want to refresh the timeline, so as soon as possible. And I run the completion to show the error to the user. If I have the activities, I'm able to select I don't want to show an error to the user, but showing their activity. In that case, I will pick a random activity from my activity arrays, and then adding that activity to the entries list. I select the name, the days left, the image, and the error is nil, as I don't have an error. And I set the next update date to 15 minutes. So after 15 minutes, it may do a new request to fetch a new activity, and then do the completion block to present the new activity widget to the user. So that's all nice. And I know now how I can create a widget and when it will be refreshed. But when the user do some interaction in the app, for example, deleting an activity, it may be a little bit weird if it's still in the widget. So let's check how you are able to refresh your widget. Refreshing your widget is the frequency of refreshing it is up to the system. So you may give the system a notification that it needs to refresh, but when, for example, the battery is very low, it may not be refreshed. So that's completely up to the system. Most of the time your widget is refreshed when you ask for it. Refreshing your widget can be done using Widget Center. You can choose for reload all your timelines for all your widgets, or just reload a timeline for a separate widget choose by yourself. So in this case, if I want to refresh only the widget example widget, I give a kind with it, and then only that widget will be refreshed. So for example, when someone removes or adds an activity inside my app, I'm able to reload only that specific widget in my code. The widget example, the widget configuration contains the widget example string, so that unique identifier, and when I want to refresh my widget, I'm able to. So you have to be sure those names are the same. Next, deep links. Small widgets only have one deep link, and medium and large widgets can have multiple deep links. So when you have a small widget, you can press on somewhere in the widget and it can open just one deep link. And if you have a medium or large widget, you can press on multiple places inside your widget and it will go to different locations inside your app if you have configured it. So how is that working? For a small widget, you can return the widget URL. And for that widget, so when you press somewhere inside the small widget, you open, for this example, the widget example /clock URL. And for a medium and a large widget, you can have separate click locations. So in this case, I've created a medium widget containing two links. When I press on test1, it has a destination that goes to widget /test1. And when I press on the link test2, I open the destination, which is a deep link to widget /test2. An example of a widget that's using deep links for different locations on a medium widget is Spotify. As you can see, it's a large widget, and if I press somewhere on the widget, I will always open Spotify. But if I press on a separate album, for example, my Discovery Weekly, I will go directly to that specific playlist. So that may be a bit helpful to go directly to a specific location inside your app. So if I press somewhere in my app and not on a link, then I will always just open the Spotify app. And if I press on album, I will only see that album or playlist. Next, XCODE previews. XCODE previews is extremely helpful when you are creating widgets, as you have different sizes, different styles like light and dark mode, and maybe different stub views depending on how your view is built. And it's extremely hard to test all those separate views. But when you have stubbed those and viewing using XCODE's previews, you are able to see all those styles simply just in 1 minute. To create a widget, to create a XCODE preview, you have to make use of the preview provider class, and that contains a static var previews, which is returning a view. And that view that you are returning is a stubbed view of your widget view. So in my example, it's the widget example entry view. And I can fill it with stub data. And when I fill it with stub data, it will be shown using that stub data inside XCODE. I can give a preview context, which is the size. So I can create multiple previews for different sizes. For example, system small, system medium, or system large. And I can see my widget directly in all those different sizes. I can also set the environment, the color scheme to dark or to light. So when I want to support both light and dark mode for my widget, I can see, I can create a system small with in dark and a system small in light, and also medium and large in dark and light. So that are already 6 different styles. But if I also want to know how my error is looking in all those styles, I already have 12 XCODE previews. And I can scroll them one by one, so that makes it extremely helpful to see all my widgets. The future of widgets. So currently WidgetKit is really new, but it may be bigger in the future. For example, with more sizes. Currently Apple News is the only app that has an extra large widget, and you are not able to set this on your main screen, but only in the widget section. And it contains a lot of news, but currently this is not available for developers, maybe in the future. Also more interaction, for example, adding a stepper or a slider to your widget to get some more interaction, or maybe a GIF or a video. And macOS support. So Big Sur macOS will be released maybe at the end of November, so that you can reuse your iOS and iPadOS widget for macOS. That was my presentation. Thank you for watching, and if you have any questions, please let me know.